What if everything you've believed about one of America's deadliest tragedies was a lie? For nearly 60 years, the official report never changed. The government called it a tragic accident. The case was closed. The files were sealed. And the witnesses slowly disappeared. But just a few months ago, something unbelievable surfaced. A forgotten metal box hidden inside the wall of an abandoned courthouse. Inside were photographs no one had ever seen, a handwritten diary, and an audio tape recorded on the very night of the disaster. The voice on that tape said something that changed everything. They knew it was going to happen, and they let it happen. If those words are true, then history wasn't just rewritten. It was buried. So who wanted the truth to disappear? What secret was worth hiding for decades? And why were innocent people forced to carry that secret to their graves? Stay with me, because by the end of this story, you'll understand why the truth stayed hidden for decades, and why some people would still do anything to keep it that way. This hook is designed to create curiosity without revealing the central mystery too early, encouraging viewers to keep watching. The story began on a cold November morning in 2026, when Ethan Carter, a 34-year-old history teacher from Pennsylvania, volunteered to help clean out the town's abandoned courthouse before it was demolished. The building had been empty for years, filled with broken furniture, dusty records, and forgotten memories. Ethan wasn't looking for fame or fortune. He simply loved preserving history, believing that every old document told a story worth remembering. As workers removed a section of the courtroom wall, Ethan noticed something unusual. Behind a loose brick was a small rusted metal box wrapped in faded brown cloth. It had no label, no lock, and no explanation. Curious, he carefully opened it. Inside were 3 items. The first was a black and white photograph of a passenger train taken just hours before a catastrophic crash in 1968. Written on the back in shaky handwriting were the words, "This was no accident." The second item was a worn leather diary belonging to Deputy Sheriff William Hayes, a man who had investigated the disaster nearly 60 years earlier. Most of the pages were damaged, but one sentence stood out. "If anyone ever finds this diary, finish what I couldn't." The final item was an old cassette tape with only one date written across it. November 18th, 1968. Ethan's heart raced. He had taught this train disaster for years. According to every history book, a mechanical failure had killed 43 passengers and ended the investigation within weeks. Yet nothing in this hidden box matched the official story. As he slipped the diary into his backpack, an elderly courthouse janitor suddenly grabbed his arm. His voice trembled as he whispered, "Put that box back where you found it." Some secrets survived for decades because powerful people made sure they never came out. For the first time, Ethan realized he wasn't uncovering forgotten history. He was opening a truth that someone had spent nearly 60 years trying to bury. Ethan barely slept that night. The janitor's warning echoed in his mind over and over again. Some secrets survived for decades because powerful people made sure they never came out. The next morning, he drove to the town library, where old newspapers from 1968 were stored on microfilm. Every article described the train crash the same way: mechanical failure, tragic accident, case closed. It was almost as if every newspaper had copied the exact same story. Then Ethan noticed something strange. One edition mentioned 44 victims. Another reported 43. A third claimed 45. How could the official death toll be different in newspapers published just days apart? Curious, he requested the original police files. The librarian frowned. "I'm sorry," she said. "Those records disappeared years ago." Disappeared? Government records weren't supposed to simply vanish. Determined to learn more, Ethan opened Deputy William Hayes' diary. Most of the pages were faded, but one entry remained perfectly readable. November 20th, 1968. "I found evidence that proves the brakes weren't the cause. Someone tampered with the tracks before the train arrived. When I reported it, they ordered me to destroy every photograph." Ethan froze. That single sentence destroyed the entire official explanation. Before he could read further, his phone rang. The caller ID showed unknown number. He answered cautiously. A calm, unfamiliar voice spoke only one sentence. "Mr. Carter, stop asking questions about the 1968 crash if you value your future." The call ended immediately. Minutes later, Ethan rushed outside. His car had been broken into. Nothing was stolen. Except one thing. Deputy Hayes' diary was gone. Someone had been watching him. And they knew exactly what he had found. Ethan reported the break-in to the local police, but the officer barely looked interested. "There are no fingerprints," he said with a shrug. Without evidence, there's nothing we can do. It felt less like an investigation, and more like a warning. The only item the thief had ignored was the old cassette tape. Ethan didn't own a cassette player, so he drove to a small antique repair shop on the edge of town. The elderly owner smiled when he saw the tape. "I haven't played one of these in years," he said. After cleaning the machine, he pressed play. For several seconds, there was only static. Then, a frightened man's voice filled the room. "This is Deputy William Hayes. If anyone is hearing this, it means I failed to protect the truth." Ethan leaned closer. Hayes continued. "The tracks were inspected the night before the crash. They were perfectly safe. But at 2:17 a.m., 3 unidentified men arrived in government vehicles. They forced everyone to leave. Less than 4 hours later, the train derailed." The recording suddenly paused. A loud metallic bang echoed through the speakers. Then another voice, deep, angry, and much closer. "Turn that recorder off now." The tape ended. Silence filled the shop. Neither Ethan nor the shop owner spoke for several moments. Finally, the old man whispered. "Someone interrupted that recording." Before Ethan could respond, the lights inside the shop went out. The front window shattered. A brick crashed across the floor. Wrapped around it was a single piece of paper. In bold black letters, it read, "Some graves should never be opened." Ethan looked toward the broken window. A black SUV was already disappearing into the distance. Whoever had stolen the diary had now made one thing perfectly clear. They weren't trying to scare him anymore. They were trying to stop him. The threat only strengthened Ethan's resolve. Instead of walking away, he searched for the only living person whose name appeared in Deputy Hayes' notes. Margaret Collins, now 87 years old and living quietly in a nursing home nearly 200 miles away. When Ethan showed her the photograph from the metal box, tears filled her eyes. "I prayed that picture would never be found," she whispered. For the first time in nearly 60 years, Margaret told the truth. She had been a young railroad signal operator on the night of the crash. Around 2 o'clock that morning, she saw 3 government vehicles arrive at the tracks. The men ordered every railroad employee to leave immediately, claiming it was a national security operation. Hours later, the train derailed. Margaret admitted she had reported what she saw. The next day, federal agents visited her home. They threatened to destroy her family's lives if she ever spoke about that night again. Terrified, she remained silent for decades. Ethan finally understood why the truth had stayed hidden for so long. It wasn't because there wasn't evidence. It was because every witness had been silenced. Using the photograph, the cassette recording, Margaret's sworn testimony, and recently declassified public records, Ethan worked with investigative journalists to publish the complete story. Within days, the report spread across the country. The government ordered a new independent investigation. Historians confirmed that the original inquiry had ignored critical evidence and suppressed key witness statements under political pressure. While the newly released records could not prove every allegation, they showed that the official explanation had been deeply flawed. Families who had waited nearly 6 decades finally received long overdue answers. Standing beside the memorial where 43 innocent lives had been lost, Ethan quietly placed the rusted metal box at its base. Some secrets can be buried for years. Some lies can survive for generations. But the truth has one remarkable quality. No matter how deeply it is hidden, sooner or later, someone will find it.